everyone. Thank you for joining us for the first part of our webinar series, What's Working? Tips to Engage Educators Through Email. To start, I'd like to introduce myself and our presenters for today. I'm Kara Murphy, the Marketing Manager at Agile, and will be your moderator for today. I'm joined by Senior Account Manager Alexa Chitwood and Liz Acton-Trimoloff, the Director of Marketing from Agile. Before we get started, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. To submit questions, please use the question box in the control center, and I will be keeping track of those as they come in. We will be covering those at the end of the webinar, so don't worry, your questions will get answered. If you have any audio or visual issues, use the same control panel to send in your issue, and I will do my best to help you. And as always, you will receive a recorded version of the webinar in the next few days. Also, at the end of today's webinar, there'll be a short 3-question survey, and if you have the time during your busy day after this, we'd appreciate if you let us know how we did, and your feedback is valuable to help us develop more webinars to cater it to you. And before we get started and talking about email, what everyone is here for, Alexa's going to be covering the importance of understanding your campaign goals and objectives, quality creative, testing, and reporting and analytics. But before I hand it over to Alexa, we wanted to take a quick poll and see how, if you guys are marketing to educators, if you're new to education, and kind of what your plan is right now. So if you can go in and complete that poll before we get started, I would appreciate it. And I'll give you a few seconds. So if you're not currently on the screen, that's totally okay. This is awesome. Thank you guys for completing this poll. Okay, so it looks like it kind of steadied out. And for today's webinar, we have about 70% of you saying yes, you currently use educators as part of your marketing targeting, and about 30% of you do not. So you're in for a treat today with marketing in general, to education, and other tips that you can use across all of the platforms and verticals that email can target. Okay, so I think I'm going to hand it over to Alexa to get us started. Alexa?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that and who participated in that poll. Before we jump in, before we jump into the importance of goals and objectives, and more importantly, how to get educators to engage with your emails, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join today's webinar. I really do enjoy building email strategies specifically for educators. And with the amount of emails that Agile sends out on behalf of our clients, I'm able to see what companies in the ed space are doing. So what their messaging is, what their products and services are that are being promoted, and ultimately what is working and what is not. It is rare that I get a chance to talk to an audience this size about email marketing, specifically to educators. So I'm pretty excited to share some pro tips with you. To give you some perspective, Agile has sent more than 70 million emails on behalf of our clients in 2018, and year to date, we're sitting right about 34 million. And in addition to specializing in education marketing, I've attended several digital and email conferences that have allowed me to see what's trending not only within the ed space, but other consumer verticals as well. And I'm always trying to bring back new ideas and strategy into the campaigns that we help our clients execute. Okay, so let's get started. The first part of engaging educators through email is understanding your campaign goals and objectives. Typically, the first question that I ask a client is, what do you want to accomplish? And this seems to be the hardest question to ask the client. The main answer that I get is, I don't know, I just want it to work. Yes, that makes sense, I get it. But going a little bit deeper, are you looking to gain brand recognition and awareness? Are you a startup ed tech company wanting to build recognition with teachers across the US? Maybe a large consumer company beginning to market into the education space and wanting to define your audience? Or are you simply looking to rebuild recognition to help you with future launches? Next one here is, what are you looking to do? Another answer to what you want to accomplish is, do you want to generate leads? Most of you are probably trying to sell your products or services, grow subscriptions, gain followers on social media platforms. Just as long as you have a purpose, you at least are looking to accomplish something with your email marketing. Question 2, what action do you want the educators to take? This can be, do you want them to sign up, download, complete a lead form, reach out for a demo? Really, what you need to do is tell them exactly what you want. They're educators, so instruct them. Moving on to defining performance. To determine if goals and objectives are being met, you must be measuring things like web traffic, form fills, downloads, demo requests, and social media engagement. All of that in addition to the standard opens and clicks that we typically look at. On here on the webinar today is there is a difference between a prospect email and an email that you're sending to your house list. Engagement happens differently with prospect emails and lists than what you would see with a house list, which would typically include your current customers, as well as past customers and those who you're currently working to get to be a customer. It can take up to 11 emails before an educator will engage, so be mindful of the messaging that you're delivering. If you are sending irrelevant content to a broad list, that can cause red flags and lead to higher opt-outs and potentially lower deliverability. I'm sure most of you know, since 70% of you guys are already emailing to educators, it's not black and white. So don't ask what the average open and click rate is for the Agile client base in general. What Agile strives in doing is working with you specifically to find out what your average rates can look like based on the campaigns we deploy for you. And why I say this is opens and clicks vary based on client. And that could be brand recognition, engagement, sending frequency, message, creative, design, offer. The list really goes on and on. So it's important that when you work with Agile or with your internal teams that you do define the difference between a prospect email and a house list email. So before we move on to the first pro tips that I'll be delivering to you all today, I do want to mention one more thing. So whether you're joining us today because what you're doing with email marketing is not working, or you're looking to improve what you already got going, I really think you're going to be able to find some new ideas within this webinar. Even if you don't know anything about email marketing or the education space in general, it's one thing for sure, email is not dead. In fact, it is thriving, and many reports, if you look at for state of the email, are showing that email is or easily can be the highest ROI within your marketing strategy. So I'm really hoping everyone will find this information helpful as there's a lot of good information coming your way this hour. All right, so let's move on to your first pro tip. You have 10 seconds or less to make an impression. So those who are opening your email and skimming it are giving your email only 2 to 8 seconds. Those are opening the email and just glancing at it are spending less than 2 seconds looking at your email. The reason I share this is because you want to take this information and tie it back to educators specifically. They're not in front of their computer all day. When they do check their emails, typically before school, maybe at lunch, and then after school. Most of their attention during the day is going to be focused on internal emails. So people sending them emails from administration or external emails from students and parents. And I will be reviewing some results on a survey that Agile conducted regarding how educators interact with email. But there is one part that I wanted to mention here because I think it's pretty relevant. So one question we asked was, on average, how many emails about education products or services do you receive every day? The answer was actually pretty interesting. 66% of administration and then everything on top of that. To get your message or email noticed, you really want to be relevant, appealing, and get their attention. So within 10 seconds, they'll want to engage. Next up, let's talk about the importance of quality, creative, and copy. Thanks, Kara. So I'm going to start with the bottom line here. I was recently in a Denver Digital Summit, and one of the speakers actually said, this is what email marketing means to her. And I'm going to repeat it word for word just so I get the point across. And Carrie, do you want to go to slide 5, I believe it is?
Yes. Sorry, guys, it's jumping around on me a little bit.
The preview of all the fun stuff you're going to see here.
There you go.
Perfect. One more or 2 more maybe? There we go. Perfect. Okay, so what the speaker said is, the goal for email marketing is to get them to do that thing. And if they don't do that thing, try to get them to do another thing. And if they don't do that thing, try sending them other things that will eventually get them to do that other thing. And if all else fails, ask them directly what thing do they want to do or see. So I know that was a lot of things, but essentially that sums up the progression of what an email strategy looks like. The end goal is you want someone to interact and engage with your brand. And to do that, you have to continuously update, revise, and manage creative and copy to make sure that they're doing that thing that you're asking them to do. For the next few slides, I'm going to walk you through all of the things in hopes to get you started with a brand new, exciting email marketing campaign. I'm going to start out by talking about the most common design and copy flaws. These are things that we see at Agile very often with the creative that our clients send over, and they're actually very easy to fix, but if they go unfixed, they could definitely wind up in the spam or promotions tab. So the first one we have is text to image ratio. Typically, we like to see 65% text and 35% image. Missing alt tags is the next one, and for those of you who don't know what alt tags are, it's when an email makes it do not download automatically. You'll see the boxes where images would populate, and then typically there's supposed to be text there letting you know what that image represents, whether that's a company logo, a header image, or potentially a social media widget image. Having those in there is extremely important because, again, it's just another way for anybody that's checking for spam to know that everything's been identified in your email. Next up is links, either using too many or not enough. We typically like to recommend that you don't use more than 2 unique landing pages. So you can have more than 2 links within your email, just make sure you're not directing that user to 2 separate or more than 2 separate landing pages. And then lastly is the header tag. And this is essentially just the title of your email. And we typically say this should define the most important heading within your email. So again, when you're building an email, make sure you're naming it. All right, going to pro tip number 2, the type of email. So I recommend creating a few different templates so that you have different types of copy that can be used at any given time. With educators specifically, they like to be familiar with the brands that they're engaging with. So if you're switching up creative too often, sometimes they lose focus on who the brand is. So consistency and familiarity with educators is key. One template I suggest putting together is a newsletter or a product announcement template. This is going to allow you more sections and more copy.
Alexa, can we wait really quickly for Kara to get the slide up to you?
Yeah.
I think there's a lag.
Oh, we're still on the same one.
Are you sure? Okay, sorry about that.
No, you're fine. So the second template is a general template, so things that you can use for webinar updates, conference notifications, and this typically is just short copy, 1 image, and 1 call to action. And I have a few examples coming up for everyone to see here in a few slides. Moving on to the call to action. So we typically like to see 1 call to action button telling the educator exactly what you want them to do. And we do know that sometimes you do want to add in some additional call to actions that can be placed within the footer of the email, linking out to social media pages, or potentially a newsletter sign up. All of those can be hyperlinked or at the footer, but we like to see 1 button, 1 call to action button within each email. We also like to say to avoid high commitment call to actions, so things like buy now and call us today. Use something a little bit more non-committal, like learn more or download our white paper. These type of call to actions don't require an investment in time or money for the educator that you're trying to. Landing pages. This one is my favorite. I also see clients that have landing pages that are essentially a page on their website, which when a lead or when someone clicks on the email and goes to that landing page, they have more possibility to get lost. You're sending them a page where they can find out about us, go to a products page, and it's very confusing, and they forget why they're there. So for example, if you have a call to action in your email to schedule a demo, and the link takes you to a form to download now, the submission feels a little messy. The streamlined creative is not the same between the landing page and the email. You really want to make sure that journey is straightforward and simple, and you really don't want the educator to sit there and say, okay, what do I do next? The journey should be very clear so they know exactly what you want them to do. And for the form, we recommend no more than 4 fields. That gives you enough information to work off of, and then in addition to that, if you maintain a CRM, you're able to pull in additional information to build a complete profile of that lead. So if you ask for first name, last name, and email, you can use the data that you have in your CRM to tie potentially the school name or the district name to that lead and really fine-tune communication you use to follow up with them. So once creative and design and messaging is all finalized and the landing page has been creative, again, I highly recommend go through the journey yourself and make sure it makes sense and that a email recipient has the potential to make it all the way through that lead funnel. And next slide, as promised, will show you a few different templates.
Thank you, Alexa. So, hey, Alexa, can I just add one quick thought on that? I think that another way to sort of manage all the different things you want people to do is to, if you start getting past the 2 separate links, or you start getting to where you want people to do more than one thing, break it into separate communication pieces. And I think that that's a way, instead of having one email that does 15 different things or 5 different things, make it 3 different emails and spread them out. And I think that that can be a way to manage, maybe like from stakeholders or, other people who are helping, to put a campaign together, cover off on what everyone's needs are, but really make it more effective and more relevant to the actual recipient, which is what we're trying to do. So thank you, Kara, and I apologize for screwing you up on that piece. And I'm excited to see your templates.
Awesome. Okay, so here are the 3 templates. I created 2 for the newsletter or product announcement and 1 for the general. But for the first 2, you can kind of see how you can use a company logo. There's different sections of information, so great for a product to highlight a few benefits. And then the general template, again, very straightforward. You have 1 image, 1 headline, very brief copy, and a main call to action. So these are the type of templates that I suggest using if you are using multiple pieces of communication with different groups of people. And one more example coming up here is the landing page. So if you look at the image on the right, it kind of looks like what one of the pages would look like on your website. And then the image on the left is what your landing page should look like. So going back to what I mentioned before, you can see that if they're going to a main page on your website, there's so much information there for them to click around on, and they will forget why they came to that page. So if you send them directly to a landing page where, again, you can cover what you did in the email, but the form is right there, the call to action is right there, they know exactly what you're asking them to do. So this is a great example of what a landing page should look like, or at least a template for it. Okay, so let's get into what educators really want in their inboxes. Agile did a survey titled How Educators Interact with Email. And I'm actually going to go through these slides fairly quickly just to drive home the importance of quality, creative, and copy. So be sure to email info@agile-ed.com, and we'll have that email at the end of the presentation as well. So you can get a full copy of the deck and also take time to look into some of these other results. So the first question that we had was, what details do you value most in emails from educator vendors? The top answer was it addresses a specific need or issue that they're struggling with. So this could be anything from student performance, professional development, curriculum options, time management, or teacher resources. And I'm sure many of you on the phone today have solutions for teachers or administrators that can help in these areas. So if you're a university, you know that teachers like continuing education. Make sure you're providing relevant information to them. Or if you are a company that have teacher loyalty programs or teacher discount programs, again, another thing that teachers are looking to get in their inbox. Next question is, what influences you to click on a link within an email from an education company? And mind you, they're only getting about 20 emails a day specifically for education products or services. The top answer here was they want to learn skills or strategy to help them do their job. Like I mentioned before, teachers are always looking to do continued education, but offering skills or strategies on how they can better do their job, that can include things as simple as taking attendance or individualized learning techniques, how to use digital materials in the classroom, or even how to implement new ideas that you can give them that's going to help with their job or their growth. That's what teachers are wanting to see. And the last question I wanted to share with you all was, how effective is email at achieving the following goals?
I think we're on the correct one for the how effective.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. I might just be lagging. So the top new announcements or services, it's highlighting exactly what the educators are wanting to see, and it breaks it down. So all three of these results essentially were based around professional development and how you can help the teachers in the classroom. All right, next slide. So I've covered what your template should look like, informed you on what the educators actually said they wanted to receive. So here's just one example of what an email journey could look like. And we've talked about teachers so far, so I'm actually going to touch on a district personnel title. So what you're looking at is an email journey that consists of 5 emails. This email could be sent to approximately 3,000 Director of Instructional Technology, which covers about 2,900 unique districts. This is in the Agile Database. So this audience is already very defined, and these folks could be decision makers, so it's very important how you target your message and what creative you use. If you look at email 1 and 2, you can see that they're focusing on brand introductions, giving the educators a chance to become familiar with the product, and the call to action is learn more, which, like we've talked about before, is non-committal. Email 3 and 4 focus on the product-specific information, so providing an overview, giving you access to things like case studies. And really what these emails should do is answer the educator's question of, why am I getting this? The content within emails 3 and 4 should answer that. And then leading on to email number 5, which is going to be the transactional email. The call to action is buy now, and all the features from the previous emails are all included in a video asset, which is just another way for educators to digest all of the information in a shorter period of time. Okay, so now let me show you an example of a good and a bad email. And I'm sure just by the look of this screen, I really shouldn't have to have the arrows there, but you can tell which one's the good one and which one's the bad one. The one on the left is actually from Vernier Software and Technology. This is an actual email that we sent out on behalf of them. And what this email is it's informational. The goal was to inform higher ed science and biology professors making it clear as to what the email is about within first glance. So again, less than 10 seconds. The call to action is non-committal. It's actually an invitation to read their blog post. And then the design, it's clean. You can skim the email and understand if you are a biology teacher or professor, you get why you're getting this email. And I want to touch just really quickly on the list of what was sent. So biology and science faculty, and again, when you have a very defined audience and an email that looks as good as this one does, it's interesting, it's shareable, and it's relevant to that person. This is exactly what we want to see our clients do. I'm not going to focus too much on the image on the right, but as you can see, this is supposed to be an informational email as well. It's supposed to give insight on how to be more cost-effective, increase security and productivity. But just looking at it, you can see the copy is very lengthy. The call to action in the bottom right-hand side is actually a call-in or visit a website. So they're not really asking you to fill out a form. But again, there's 12 sections of information here. So your eyes are all over the place. And if someone that has less than 10 seconds, they're not going to know what next step to take. So again, this is just an email which don't do this. And even if you're not looking to gauge ROI or engagement within emails, make sure that your email has a purpose. And one quick other note that I wanted to comment on Bernier, they are one of the top performing clients that we have as it relates to email marketing. And really what they're doing is following our best practices. They have clean design, clear messaging. A lot of their audience is very targeted and geo-targeted within the deployment. And they are constantly sending. They send up to about 15 emails a month. And keep in mind that that includes both the initial emails as well as the follow-up trigger emails. And that's what's working for them. But every client is different, every brand and every service is different. So let Agile really help you define what is your success looking like. All right, on to pre-deployment testing. So when you partner with Agile and we deploy your email campaigns, your creative actually goes through a series of testing software to ensure that your email is following best practices, from the build of the email to the design and functionality of the email. And one thing we like to work with our clients on is make sure you're working with your internal teams. Make sure that they understand the goals and objectives of each email campaign that you're trying to execute. And ensure before that the email gets sent out for approval that they have a checklist to go through to make sure everything looks good. So one checklist that I typically like to look at are things like subject line, the from name, the reply to email address, which you should never use a no reply email address. Everyone should be able to get a hold of you. Preview text, links, tracking, image, loading speed, etc. And that was pro tip number 3. Create a checklist so that once the creative is ready to go and your internal team can look at it, everybody's on the same page and things have been checked. So once everything's been approved and you send that email over to Agile, we go through a few different steps. First is spam and rendering, and the second is deliverability and content. So when we look at spam and rendering, we look at things like copy, links, whether or not they're live, the email formatting, and potential spam words or phrases that could come up. We also are able to run the creative through software that generates renderings for your email. So it's going to include the desktop versions, mobile versions, and app versions. And I'm going to show you some examples here in the next few slides. Looking at deliverability and content, our software checks the text-to-image ratio, the alt tags, HTML code, and really the messaging as a whole. We get alerted, of course, with any spam words that could come up, but I do want to let you know that there are many common spam words, or so they call spam words, and I think it's an old wives' tale because you can use words like free, award-winning, opportunity, act now, exclusive to you, or time is running out, in moderation, and you're not going to go directly to the spam folder. I think that's one thing in email is you have to continue to test to see what works for you. And Agile actually has deployed several emails where a lot of these information or key phrases are in there and they get delivered fine. So as long as you use them sparingly, you can use them. The picture that you see on the screen, I don't know if every district or school networking or security site looks as pretty as this one does. But I did want to mention that Agile actually implemented a best practice over the course of last year, and that is throttling all of our emails and campaigns for clients. And when we're sending millions of campaigns for our clients, we did discover that when several emails are hitting a server at once, they have the potential of getting blocked, which is something we don't want to happen. So we did implement the throttling, which sends it over days and or hours, depending on the volume of the list. And larger servers like Microsoft and Google place a really different weight on what they consider relevant for deliverability and inbox. So Google, for example, places more emphasis on engagement. So the more engagement you have, the more likely you're getting into an inbox. With multiple sets of eyes on the creative, as well as a segmented list and throttling, this doesn't have to be a roadblock that you come up against with your email marketing. It's just a matter that, someone at the district, it's their job to make sure that no malicious content is getting through. So they've become very intelligent, and by following the best practices, you have the highest opportunity of making it into the inbox of the educators. Okay, so more examples is what I promised you. So that slide's coming up. So I mentioned that Agile had a series of checks to ensure that your email is rendering correctly. And on the screen, you're looking at a few of the grabs that I had from the Vernier technology or software and technology email that you looked at previously. You'll have options to look at Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Yahoo, Outlook. You can actually select specific options such as Outlook in Windows 7, which is an older version, or the Gmail app if you're using iOS 10.3.2. So it does get very specific, and when you look at rendering in this way, you just want to make sure that whichever server or mail platform that the educator is using, it's going to come across looking great. So that is what we keep in mind here. All right, up next we want to touch on creative testing, excuse me. So now that we've officially tested, created, and deployed, let's look at what we can use for testing email creative. And I'm actually going to have Kara pull up another poll for us here. Before we get into tip number 4. So how many of you are actually using a testing brief every time you test? Be honest, because I'm curious to see your results. And Kara, let us know how things are turning out.
Yes, people are coming in. It's leaning towards the no side, but we do have roughly about 5 to 7% saying yes. So there is people, but obviously that means that there's opportunity for everyone to try something different.
Awesome. Well, for those of you that are filling out a testing brief each time you test, props to you. This is my pro tip number 4. Having a creative brief is extremely helpful. Not only does it get everybody on the same page, but it holds all parties accountable. What does a testing brief tell you? Well, it'll define your audience, define the volume. It'll lay out what timing you're looking at to execute a particular test. It'll let you know what testing variable, whether that's an image or a subject line or the copy. And my favorite part is it will compare what your baseline performance is. So what are you comparing it against? And then lastly, what your goals and objectives are for that particular test. And with each brief, make it yours. Any team can create a brief that fits them. So don't feel like the examples I give you here in a few minutes are the end-all be-all. Make sure it's custom to what you and your team need. So moving on to planning and strategizing. I really work with clients a lot, and my biggest advice is to work with your other managing other marketing channels and see if there's anything specific that would benefit them from testing with an email. If the sales is trying to figure out why they're having a hard time getting benefits across to some district leaders, try some different messaging with an email, review results, and then potentially implement a new talk track for sales. It doesn't have to be strictly around improving email in general, but if you work with your internal teams, you're also going to get some additional testing opportunities out of that as well. So what are you looking to find out, or what is the purpose of the test? An answer could be that you're looking to see if a particular educator responds at a higher rate. You're looking to see which one actually purchases the information or purchases my product or service, or potentially what keywords are in the subject line that generates most opens. So now I want to talk about the easiest and most effective items to test. Personalization is huge right now. Everybody is trying to make each email touch point with not only a consumer, but educators specifically, very intelligent, right? You want it to be very custom, and when someone's getting that email, they want to know that you've defined this message specifically for them. So for personalization, there's a few different ways to do this. You could talk about the educator within your email. So listing out their first name, their title, or maybe the school or district that they work with. You can talk about their school. So list off the county that they're in, or potential related schools within the district that they're in, or the number of students. I am going to read you a quick little example for you that touches on several different pieces of these types of personalization. So, Mr. Jones, being a principal is a hard job, and we know that you wear multiple hats and barely have time for lunch. We just wanted to introduce you to ABC Company. We help schools within the 123 district streamline their attendance process. And with 7,000 students at your school, we really think you could benefit from our solution. Something as simple as that makes it very custom to that principal, and definitely could help with engagement. So think of things or data points that you have within your file to really personalize each message, or whether that's dedicated to the title, the group of people, grade level specific, personalize as much as you can. And the last part of personalization is doing it by user information. So if you have a product or subscription that teachers or admins subscribe to, you could send out an email saying, hey, you've logged on 3 times this month, or you've completed over 100 math questions. Congratulations. Anything to show that you're paying attention to them is what they're looking for. They want to feel like they're heard and seen, and the best way to do that is acknowledge what they're doing. And then to jump through the subject line, I think a lot of people go to the A/B testing for a quick and easy way to test. HTML versus plain text, images, call to action, and audience. A lot of our clients like to see how educators respond, whether they're at the district level or at the building level. And taking it a step further, if they're at the building, if administration and teachers respond any differently to a particular message. So triggers. Triggers is a recommended campaign that you would send out after each initial email. And typically these go out about 3 to 7 days after the initial deployment. And we always say you should alter the messaging just a little bit. So if someone already clicked and opened your email, send them a follow-up that says, are you still interested in learning more? Or you express interest, and we're around if you have any questions. It's similar to what we see with an abandoned cart email, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. You leave that dress or those pair of shoes in the cart, and with it seems like minutes, but you get an email saying, hey, you left me behind, come back and get me. So something similar to that. If they've already expressed interest, make sure you take advantage of that. And one last thing for triggers is time slips away from all of us. So we could be interested in an email while we're reading it, and then we get distracted or we have to do something. So it's always nice that educators are given that second chance to engage with a particular brand, service, or product. So the next one is trends in testing. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I've been fortunate enough to attend a lot of email marketing and digital marketing conferences. And I've been able to pull out, what educators are doing, but also see what the general public of email marketing are doing. And this first one has actually become a really big trend, and some of you are probably doing it. But if you're not, I highly recommend executing this as a potential next test. And that is adding us to your contacts. So adding that copy at the footer or the header of your image. And the reason being is because each campaign or each email platform has their own standard settings. If you can get the educator to add you to their contact list, you're going to make it into the inbox instead of spam, junk, or the promotions tab. And one quick note here is within the Agile database, we actually have over 50% of the emails that are associated to a Google inbox. That is huge. So if you're a current Agile client, talk to your account manager about implementing that content in there. And if you don't currently work with us, then think this is a good tip, I would highly recommend adding that copy as well as getting that add us to your contacts into your new email. The next reason to test, or the next option to test, is real talk voice. So so similar to the example I gave around personalization, don't sell them, don't talk to them like you're a sales guy. Talk to them as if you're giving them a recommendation to a restaurant. Make it very personable. The next one is stop using stock photography. Custom photos are great, especially if you can catch students using your digital curriculum on the iPad. They can still be professionally taken, but have it, fine-tuned to your brand, your product. We've actually had a lot of clients use pictures that teachers will post to Twitter that they're tagging the company and saying, hey, we love your product or service. Here's my classroom taking advantage of it. Those are the type of images that educators want to see. So if you are able to do some custom photography, we highly recommend doing that as a test as well. A few of the last ones here are engaging or using a survey within your email. If you use a one-question, one-click submission, you get real-time feedback. So again, this goes back to getting them to do that thing. If you send an email out and say, hey, are you more interested in white papers or teacher resources, or are you more looking to get time management information? Have them click the button, and that gives you real time and will help you define what your future strategy and messaging should look like. The last one here is the strong push for social media and emails to run cohesive campaign strategies so that you can create a story. Agile has a very robust role database, but we also have educator at home information. So if you are running a social media campaign, not only could you reach a teacher in their classroom, you could also reach them while they're at home on a Friday or Saturday night logged into Facebook. So making sure you work with, again, not just the email team, but other teams that you work with internally, and see how you can strategize together to build that story between your brands. All right, next slide is the one example of a creative testing tracker. So like I said before, make sure that you make this yours. Whatever works for your team, put it into place. This acts as just a very high-level way to track what you're testing. So it defines your target audience, what the creative is, what the call to action is. It does list out what subject lines you're testing. And then for this particular example, I just added in what the stats were, so the open rate and the click rate were for that particular test. The next one is more of a detailed view of what you just looked at in the Excel version. So this allows you more room to share information around volume, timing, and then also if you have a control exactly how that works, put that information in here. And one really good thing that I like here is adding in snapshots of the creative that you're testing. That way this document works as a one-stop shop for finding out if a test was successful or not. And included within this is also not only the Agile results, so what you're able to see through eAnalysis, and we will talk about that service here in a second, but the client results as well. So anything that our clients provide to us, whether that's that they saw, site traffic improve, or they had 15 downloads, or had 45 people fill out a registration form for one of their webinars. Any feedback you can provide us or to your internal teams only allows us to really gauge how that creative and deployment did. Okay, so let's talk about reporting and analytics. So now that we've officially created, tested, deployed, and tested again, let's go over the importance of this. To me and several of my clients, this is the most important part of an email campaign because it's in the data that you can really see if you've been successful or increased educator engagement. And when you partner with Agile, you actually have access to our eAnalysis site. It's an online reporting platform available to you 24/7, and it stores campaign data for up to 2 years. One big thing that we have are called e-leads, and what those are when you send out an email campaign, and you have folks opening and clicking, there's going to be an e-leads button that you're going to be able to go in and download a list of warm leads to send off to your sales team and have them begin that nurturing process. eNalysis also provides a high-level campaign performance and uses a lot of visuals like heat maps and charts. For me, I like Excel a lot, and so not only do I like exporting these and looking at in Excel, but having the visuals like the heat map are also beneficial, especially if you're using them internally for reporting. So the ones that you're looking at on the screen right now, the top one is going to be the campaign overview. So that's going to give you the campaign name, how many records were delivered, what the open and click rates looked like. And then the middle one, as you can probably tell, is the heat map. The bigger the circles are, the larger amount of engagement that you're seeing in those areas. And then that last one is a title review. So this is actually going back to the Rainier example, World Earth Day or Oceans Day. This is showing, how those biology and science teachers performed. And I actually have it sorted here by open rate. So you can see that the natural sciences, biology sciences professor actually engaged the most with this campaign, which with that fine-tuned audience that they had, that is what should be happening, right? You're meeting the right audience. And let's see, let's go to pro tip number 5 here. So that's client-provided insight. So although we look at opens and clicks, it is super helpful for any information you can provide back to us to tie it to the email performance. So again, if that's web traffic, new newsletter signups, the number of downloads you got on a white paper, better yet, if you could send us a lead list as to who was generated from a particular email campaign, it's only going to allow us to help you define your audience and creative moving forward. Okay, so let's go over my pro tips. So pro tip number 1, you have less than 10 seconds to make an impression. Pro tip number 2, create a few different templates that work for various types of messaging. And included in this is crafting your message for your audience and creating a great landing page. Pro tip number 3, create a checklist to ensure your email is following best practices, from the build and design to the functionality and ability to meet campaign goals and objectives. Pro tip number 4, create a testing brief document and test with a purpose. And then pro tip number 5, we just covered it, share your campaign insights, not only with us, but with your internal teams. Again, this goes back to, the omni-channel marketing here. The more information you could provide to your social team, your digital team, SEO, PPC teams, that's all going to have you guys work together and essentially build a great brand story out there in the digital space. So let's recap. I hope you all really like the heart on the right-hand side. I spent a lot of time putting that together. But let's see. So educators are a very special and selective group, but they can be really loyal customers. So offer them tools and resources that will build a lasting relationship. Your creative design and messaging say a lot about your brand, and with less than 10 seconds to make an impression, make it count. Build a performance baseline for your brand, your messaging, and your product and service, and make sure tracking is in place to give credit where credit is due. Be the hero who makes your email marketing your top email marketing channel. Test with a purpose. And lastly, take the time to review performance and make changes to your list and creative, as well as design and copy, so that you can continue to improve your email marketing to educators. So Kara, that is all I had. A big thank you to everyone who joined. I really hope you were able to take away a few pieces of new information to help you with your email marketing to educators. So Kara, I will hand questions that come through.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexa. We do have questions coming through. If someone was looking for an example to see what it looks like when you have what you recommended, the add to contacts link, where could they find an example like that? Or would that be something that you're willing to find the example and send them to the person that asked this question as well?
I can absolutely find you an example if you'd like to see it, but anytime you Google like a best practice on how to be added to a recipient's contact list, you should find a few on Google as well.
Okay, perfect. Let me go through. I'm scrolling for you guys.
And if you want a few real-world examples, my email is on the screen, so feel free to action as well, and I can give you a real example of an email that we've sent with that content in it.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you for doing that. Another one is, in terms of design, was the template that you provided something that can be created online through a third-party design software? And he's referencing the example between Vernier and the other template as well.
Yes, so Vernier, I believe, has an internal creative team, but there are several, I don't want to say free, but a lot of different resources out there on the web for you to either create your own design, or they have preset templates where you log in as a user and you're able to drag and drop, copy, and images. So if you don't have a creative team, there's absolutely other alternatives for you to use to build a template similar to the best practice of Vernier.
Okay, another one that came in, if someone wants to do some testing or all of the testing that you're suggesting kind of helps the strategy with email and building the brand story, and they don't have access to the testing tools that we use, what could they go to?
Again, there's definitely a lot of resources out there, but I would highly recommend you connecting with somebody at Agile, and we can absolutely walk you through how we do it and what services we use, and then also give you some insight as to what vendor might work best for you, especially if you don't have those tips or those tools in-house.
Okay, and then I think this is a great one because I mean, I'm in marketing and I run into this all the time. What can I do to my list to engage the non-engagers?
Okay, so this is actually a really good question and actually pretty controversial. Some of the digital summits that I've been to, this is the main topic of conversation. And everything that we've heard back is you do not want to. What you want to do is put those folks into their own segments and really fine-tune the messaging for them. If you've been sending them emails that are buy now or potentially sending to principals that just don't have the time to look at an email, try to put those folks into a new group and really fine-tune the audience. One thing that we see at Agile specifically is we'll send emails to building level as well as district level administration. And for the most part, we see people at the building respond at a higher rate. Well, most likely they have a little bit more time on their hands versus those district folks. But we also see that a lot of the district people end up being the ones making the purchase. So I think it's good to include both sets of people and not eliminating everybody, but finding a new way to engage with them.
That is a perfect answer, and I mean helpful for myself as well. I'm gonna do this one too because I think it aligns with trying to find out what works and what doesn't work. Can you gauge email performance solely on the opens and clicks if you don't really have the tracking ability?
You said the word solely. I want to say no, you cannot. But if opens and clicks are all you have, it is going to give you some insight as to what is working. And the way I say that is opens and clicks, most likely after a campaign is sent, you're going to see the most results come in within the first 72 hours of sending that campaign. If you are able to put tracking within your email, you can see if people are going to the website or your social media pages. So they're leaving the email, but they're still taking additional action elsewhere to find out more information about your brand or service. So if you're only doing email, it's going to stop at someone interacting with email. If someone's opening your email, going out to your website, going to your YouTube page or your LinkedIn page, trying to find out more information. That stuff doesn't get tracked, but it's technically correlated to that first initial engagement through email. So yes, you can get some information based on just opens and clicks, but we like to say there's much more to be reviewing to have the full picture of how a campaign performs.
Okay, great. And then this is the last question that we've received in, and if you have more, we have 3 more minutes, so if you want to get your last question in, I'm giving you that time now. Otherwise, this is our last question. It says, social has much better KPIs, which is key performance indicators, than email. Are you seeing the same?
So it depends. It all depends on, the frequency that you're sending with email and what you're doing in social. Kind of like one of the tip opportunities is working with your social team. If you get on the same page as to what's working for them, you can absolutely implement some of those ideas within your email campaign. And within email, you're able to change things on the fly and target audiences just like you can in social media. So I would highly recommend working with your social team to see what's working, and then meeting with someone at Agile to help you define how we can, not only, do maybe what your social media team is doing, but offer some additional ideas on how to engage those educators and make email a more profitable avenue for you.
Yeah, I think social works really well too, to kind of be an additional place. I mean, I think that marketing at its most basic level is teaching people about your business, and so many of us are former educators who work in this space, and you know that people have to see the same message multiple times in multiple ways. So I think that sometimes you might send the same person, or they might have an impression via an email and social, but perhaps they're more likely to engage in social. So that might be why the direct KPI looks that way. So that might be something else to look at, but they can certainly work together. And with some of our newer social products, we can certainly get you in front of exactly the people that you're wanting to, who convert the best, whatever you're working on right now. Yeah, I think that's it's an it depends kind of question or answer.
I think that's great. We are 1 minute away, and I do kind of want, there's a lot of questions coming in now that I don't want to hold you on your busy day, but I'll get a report of all of these questions, and I will send it out, and we will have Liz and Alexa reach out to you by the end of today, if not tomorrow morning, with all of the answers to your guys' great questions, because there was a lot of good ones. A lot did come through asking, are you going to get a copy of the presentation? Yes. Tomorrow you will be getting a follow-up email from GoToWebinar, and it'll have a copy of the presentation here. But if you want a copy of the slide deck, use the email on there, or email Alexa and Liz, and they'll be able to send that to you as well. But you will get a copy of this to share with anyone in your organization that you think needs to see this, wants to hear it, and use it as a training tool as well. With that being said, I hope you guys got a lot out of today. I know I did. And if you have any other questions, use the same email, and we look forward to having you guys on our next webinar. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.